We have a keynote speaker, and I want to call him up at this time. Julius, I believe. I don't want
Good evening, everybody. My name is Julius Adewumi. I'm originally from Nigeria. I've spent the last 36 years here. I was asked to speak very briefly, and I was challenged to speak before dinner. And I thought, nothing stands between Africans and food. And then I got moved to after dinner. And I thought, that could be better. Then Raya comes up here and gives that powerful speech. And I think, I'm supposed to follow that? Well, I'm gonna do my best. As I said before, we come from all over the world. We come from Africa. We come here in search of our excellence. We come from a very rich culture, full of tradition, respect, discipline. Now, sometimes this discipline can be very punitive, as some of us have experienced. Do any of you recognize these punishments? Yes? Yes. You recognize it? Yeah. If you ask one of my children here, if you ask them, they've probably been to one or two of those. Now, we're also very compassionate people. As can be seen in this next video. We do any and everything we can to get the job done. Any and every time I want to amuse myself, I have a plethora of these videos that come through my WhatsApp that I can always get to entertain myself. I get a lot of things come through WhatsApp, a lot of notable things, a lot of things that Africans are doing all over the world. And I think that would be maybe a speech for a presentation for next time. But today, I want to ask everybody here, what is your excellence? Specifically the Africans. What is your excellence? I mean, we come from all over. We come here to evolve and attain our excellence. But what is your excellence? As a society, we've identified 5 primary agents of social control. We have the family. We have the church. We have the school. We have the community. And we have law. Most of us know that are from Africa know we only deal with the first 4. Because if the first 4 can't handle you, you're done. Because when the law gets a hold of you, there's no coming back. Now, we're fortunate enough to be here in America where all 5 of those agents count. But I have to share something with you. Are we really in diaspora? Are we really building a community? Are we? As I said, 35 years ago, I came to St. Louis. I came to go to school. I went to St. Louis University. I graduated and started working. I was supposed to go back home and take over the family business, but When you see your currency change within 4 years of being here in the United States of America, from 1 to 1 naira to 1 American dollar, to 100 to 1, you kind of have to have second thoughts. Just in case you don't know, when you do the math, if you had $1 million back then, it all of a sudden became 10,000. I hope that sinks in. By the way, it's 330 naira to $1 today. So if somehow or another you've accumulated so much wealth and you thought you were set for life, think again. Now, why did this happen? I can go into a long history of it, but I will tell you this. It happened because we did not get involved. We stood back and let others dictate where our lives was going to go. That's why it happened. So I'm here today to share a few things with you. Having worked here for a number of years and run my businesses, tragedy sort of hit my family. Well, let me backtrack. I got married and fell in love. I knew that would get a chuckle. That's the right way to do it. When you fall in love, then you get married. That's the wrong way to do it. See, I love my wife, but I got married and then I fell in love. You see, I fell in love with her and my family entity as a whole. My son, my 23-year-old son who's in Atlanta today, my 20-year-old daughter who's in Chicago today, and my 16-year-old son. That's who I fell in love with. After a number of years, as I said earlier, we had a little bit of tragedy that hit my family. My youngest brother, who's here in St. Louis as well, lost his family. When I say he lost his family, he lost his wife and 3 beautiful children to murder-suicide. At that point, I started to think, why am I really here? So I ask you guys, why are you really here? Now we all know we come from a culture that's rooted in work ethic. So we come here and we work our tails off and we make it happen. Just like that video shows you, we find a way to get things done. But why are we really here? I began my search because I started to think there was something missing in my life. See, I raised my kids with a deep-rooted Nigerian tradition. Any of my kids will tell you, I cook a lot. Any disciplines that I got raised with, they are aware of and they got raised with. But just as we come from a very powerful culture, I have to tell you guys something. This culture here is extremely powerful as well. And inasmuch as you can do any and everything you can for your children, the culture at large here is going to grab a hold of them. And when I say grab a hold of them, it's going to grab a hold of them. I was arrogant and I thought, all this is beyond, it's beyond my family. I grew up with a tough father, a compassionate father, a loving mother and a tough mother. I married a tough woman. She supported my hardcore Nigerian traditions. She didn't turn me into social services at any time. She was tempted a couple of times. But seriously, this is what we're faced with. This is what we are faced with here in Diaspora. In my search for the 4th agent of social control I identified, community. I began to gather the Nigerian couples that I knew together with children, my children's age. I began to meet with them on Sundays, all the way up to 11 o'clock sometimes. And the intention was to try to build a community, to get the kids together, to know each other. See, whether it's Snapgram or InstaChat, I don't know anything about that stuff, but they do. A friend of mine told me one time that one of the kids posted something online. And he came to me and asked me to speak with the father because what he posted was very embarrassing. And so I called my oldest son and I said, "Do you know this young man?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I see him, Dad. He posts a lot of stuff." I said, "His parents are Nigerian, very respectable people of the community. I think you ought to talk to him." Well, he found a way to get a hold of him, and he spoke with him, and the kid removed what he could remove, because it stays online forever. But it stopped. My fellow Africans, that is more powerful than anything as parents that you can do. See, these children that we have here, they have to be able to monitor themselves. You can't overlook and see everything that they do, because like I said, the culture grabs a hold of them. We can take positives out of any and everything, but the culture grabs a hold of them. So why are we here? My search brought me to a little church. I believe it was St. Pius. How many years ago? 5 years ago. And I met an African community, and I brought my children so they could mix with all the other African children. Now, some of us might say, "I'm so successful," like Ryo mentioned earlier, "I don't need to be around those low-class people." Some people might say, "My kids are way beyond that." Some others might say, "I just don't have the time." Well, ladies and gentlemen, the culture has the time to grab a hold of your children, and it will. It has a chance, and it will grab a hold of your children. We have probably one of the most contagious cultures around the world in this country. Contagious. So as I said, my journey continued, and I met Mr. Anani. I met Ryo. And they began to tell me this vision for the African Diaspora Council. And I have to be honest with you. I looked at Mr. Anani and I said, "Man, what's this Bushman talking about?" Right? Because, how can somebody from Togo have that kind of a lofty vision that the architect showed? No, those kind of visions come from the giants of Africa. They come from Nigeria. They come from Ghana. Not from Togo. I mean that with all compliments. I sat down and spent, 3-4 hours with him. And he walked me through this vision. We walked around this campus, around this complex. He told me of the generosity of the landlords here. And I was shocked. So what does any good Nigerian African man do? You go back and you sit back and you wait and see what happens. You don't jump right in. After 34 years here, I've seen him come and I've seen him go. I went around and checked into that young man's integrity, because that's what I do. Just like if you were going to engage me with anything I do, I would expect you to look in and check into my integrity. And I did that. I asked a lot of questions. I found out several years later that the young man's motives are genuine. You know how I know they were genuine? I came here one day, see these tiles up here? Half this place, or 3/4 of it, didn't have any tiles. This man was working and putting them up himself. I've watched him work to the bone, put his heart, blood, and sweat into this building. You know, in real estate, we say sometimes a piece of real estate is a piece that sometimes keeps on giving. He just never stopped working on it. But he's found a way to keep building with the team, with the board that they have set here, to keep him on track. But he's found a way to keep building and building with Ryo. And that brings us here today. So my question is again, what is your excellence? I'm here today because I was asked to come say a few words. In the process of it, I caught the bug of the African Diaspora Council. The search was for the 4th agent of social control. That was my search. That was my personal search. It might not be yours, but it was mine. It was mine for the sake of my children. My son went to Chicago a few weeks ago, my 23-year-old. He went to celebrate an African birthday with one of his friends from Kansas City. This young man came back. He said, "Dad, I have a lot of friends." And he does. He meets, I don't think he's never met anybody that wasn't his friend. He said, "Dad, I have a lot of friends. But man, these Africans in Chicago, these Africans that are my friends from here, they just seem to be like my real brothers. They just seem to be like my real brothers." See, part of one of the issues we have, that we're all going to have, is social identity. How do you raise your kids up in diaspora to be Congolese, to be Nigerian, to be Ghanaian, to be Togolese, to be Zambian? How do you raise them up here and be able to stand proud and say, "I'm from the Ogoni land"? How do you do that? You need community. You need community. You need the African Diaspora Council. You need this building. This is just a building. Just like the church is just a church. But it needs you. It needs your individual excellence. It needs you. It doesn't need you down on South St. Louis as a Kenyan community. It doesn't need you down on North St. Louis as a Nigerian community. It doesn't need you out in wherever St. Louis that you're located. It needs you here in this building, gathering with your time, your talent, and your treasure in this building. So I ask you again, my fellow Africans, what is your excellence? What is your excellence? I'm here today, once again, just to share a few words with you. I've shared a little bit of my life with you, but I want to ask you, my fellow Africans, let's unite. Let's get together. Let's find our excellence. Let's find our excellence together in the African Diaspora Council. Let's unite. My Nigerians, where are you? My Zambian princess, where are you? My Congolese, where are you? My Ugandan, where are you? Am I missing anybody? Sierra Leoneans, Ivory Coast. What's that? What did I miss? Kinlock. You're my brother as well. Ghana, of course, absolutely. Gambia. Quite frankly, I have to tell you guys, I mean, I almost left and went home. Because these guys that were speaking earlier, I thought, these guys are great speakers. What am I doing here? I'm just gonna eat some jollof rice and go home. Because they were so powerful, from Ghana, from Gambia. But I thought, I'll stick around and just maybe share a few things with you guys. In my call to action this evening, for all my fellow Africans, and for guys from Kinlock, let's unite. Let's unite. One Africa, one God, one excellence, our excellence. Thank you very much.
You know what it is. Bring out the day. Down, girl. Go down, down. Yeah, the sound, girl. Down. I'm in love, oh. I said I'm in love, oh. Baby, let me cover you. When you stand, I'm under you.